All right, who's ready for some tomfuckery? No. This is the Tribe Time Now After Dark show, and I'm Joe Koblitz from Burning River Baseball at BRBBLOG. I'm joined with Kevin Gall, who is at KGall216, and apparently a dog.
Yeah, no, that's mine.
That's Stephanie Licio, and I can't say. You better say your own Twitter.
Yes, it's just my name, Stephanie Licio at Stephanie Licio, STEPHANIELISCIO.
Okay, that's really hard for me to spell things. I generally require aid on those type of things. Anyway, the Tigers won tonight. That happens a lot. I don't think we need to do a full recap of the game. I think anyone watching now or in the near future will know about it. Of course, if you're listening in the far future, the date was June 23rd, 2015, and I want to know, are the Tigers still winning? Like in the far future, is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who looks back from 2013 to 2015, you can just assume the Tigers won. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I guess the game doesn't matter, and I don't know. I wrote an article this morning for the Tribe Time Now website, which is the first time I've done that. Usually I write for my own website, but I was kind of angry about something, and I don't write angry stuff on my site. So I posted it there instead, and I kind of wanted to talk about that tonight because I think it all fits in with this thing, and I think Matt Underwood really does fit in this. I think people thought I was joking when I kept saying I want to talk about Matt Underwood, but I really do want to talk about Matt Underwood. Doesn't everyone else?
I mean, for various reasons. Maybe not necessarily the one you want, but. Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you two like Matt Underwood? I guess that's a good question. No?
Not really. No, not at all.
Do you think he's a good announcer?
I mean, if you want to go technical, his play-by-play, I think he's decent, but I can't stand listening to him talk baseball. I think he's just a moron. And that's coming from a fellow Baldwin Wallace College grad, as I am, and he is. He makes us all look terrible.
Yeah. Okay, Stephanie, you said something?
I was going to say, I think he's getting worse. Either that or my patience is growing thinner because I just don't remember it being this bad and this annoying.
Oh, yeah, my theory on this whole thing, and it has to do with the Indians game tonight and everything. It's all together. The Indians in the 90s, that whole ridiculous shit fest that happened like 2 nights ago with Kenny Lofton and who's Dennis Martinez talking shit on the current Tribe. Like, it all goes together for me, and I think it is the Indians front office is afraid to do anything that might shock its fan base. And I'm not talking about us, the fan base. I'm talking about the fan base that is between 30 and 100 years old. You know, all the guys Rick Manning gives birthday shout-outs to. And I'm talking about the ones who don't know what the internet is, who just listen to them and go, oh, response runs and clutch hits and that type of shit. Like, they're afraid.
The ones who count pitchers' wins as the definitive statistic of their quality. Yeah.
Exactly, and I don't want to offend my guest from last Sunday on the Weekend Update, TW Sports. That's Will Hart, who is a great website. I don't want to offend him by saying pitcher wins don't count, and that all this other stuff like that. Those aren't good. They're good fans, and I have family members who are that type of fan. I am not that type of fan, and I don't think that type of fan should be deciding personnel moves. And I think a lot of that can be seen in Matt Underwood. Obviously, he's not the best choice for that job. There are better people in the system. Brian Anderson, I think, is one of the top 5 announcers in the league, and they had him. They could have kept him. He could still be here, you know? So, like, I think they kept Underwood because people are comfortable with it. They don't like change. They like that he's a homey guy. He talks about cats and long-tailed cats and room full of rocking chairs and shit like that. You know, I think they like that, and I think that's why they keep bringing back the 1990s Indians players and letting them talk shit on the current Tribe. If I was Jason Kipnis or Trevor Bauer, and I heard Dennis Martinez saying that the current Indians do not work as hard as the 90s Indians, because they don't stay in the clubhouse drinking until 2 in the morning, and then they show up early for work the next day. I mean, I would ask Francona to never let those people in the building again.
You know, the thing is, that's the mantra that everybody takes when you look back at a time. No matter what sport you're talking about, or really anything, everything that happened 20 years ago is always going to be better than it is now. And 20 years from now, we're going to be looking back, and a lot of the fans who are growing up in this day and age are going to say 2015 was so much better than 2035. It's always like that. I've been in debates with the Dream Team in 2012 and compared to 92. There was a big thing of who is better. It doesn't matter who it is. It's always going to be that it's better to go 20 years before that. Like, I'm a basketball fan. Bill Russell would get his ass kicked by Dwight Howard right now because he's tiny. But nobody is ever willing to admit that. And no, this isn't a basketball.
No, I'm willing to. You are absolutely right, and I'm willing to admit that. That's what I've always said, and I love. I just read a book. I'm going to do a report on Burning River next week, but it was called Men at Work by George Will. It's an old book.
Oh, yeah.
And in it, he said that if Babe Ruth was playing today, he wouldn't be able to play against these guys. But if he had worked out like the players do today, back in that time, he probably would have hit 900 home runs. Like if he really would have put an effort into it instead of just eating hot dogs and cake all day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's just natural progressions that players have made it as athletes. That you're a better athlete than you are 50 years ago. That's just it's. Science has developed and new techniques for working out and just different things like that have made people much better physically than they ever were.
All right, can I talk shit on Kenny Lofton one more time too?
I suppose.
Because he said on the air the other day, and this is what really bugged me, he said that when he was in Indians camp, that if somebody of his caliber were in the camp when he was a player, that everyone would have been knocking down his door and trying to get into, talk to him all the time. And that the only two people that talked to him when he was in camp were Michael Brantley and Michael Bourne. And my point is, maybe they had other reasons for not talking to him. One of them being that he said the 2013 playoff team wasn't a real playoff team.
Yeah, and that whole thing with Nick Swisher.
Yeah, so and then just recently I've been talking to a friend of mine who I'm going to claim as an inside source on the Indians, and he knows Jason Giambi personally, and he said that when Giambi was in the clubhouse, the players would rush to get to eat lunch with Jason Giambi. Like, his table was always packed. They always wanted to be sitting next to him because they wanted to learn from him. It wasn't that they didn't respect their elders. They didn't respect Kenny Lofton. And I have no problem, after the way he acts over and over again, with them not respecting a man who can't understand that the game has passed him by a little bit.
Well, I'm kind of surprised he still comes around because from what I've heard, he's not pleased with the Indians, and there's a lot of bitterness there, so I'm kind of surprised he keeps showing up to things. I mean, if I'm mad at someone or mad at something, like maybe I don't talk smack or maybe I don't do anything awful, but I avoid it, I'm not going to go show up and do these meet and greets for 20th anniversaries and other things. So I'm kind of always surprised by that when I see him, you're not kind of happy with these people, but yet you keep showing up.
I think, isn't Albert Bell the same way? But he doesn't show up to things. I mean, they have to beg him to show up to spring training once for a day during the whole time. I mean, and he's definitely somebody who has the same kind of mindset. Whereas, you guys weren't as good as we were, but he doesn't. He just keeps his mouth shut. So I agree with you. Maybe they should just stop inviting Kenny to things if all he's going to do is badmouth the current team. I mean, the '90s can't go on forever. In fact, they ended 15 years ago.
Well, yeah, and that's what my point was in the whole thing I wrote, for Tribe Time Now, is that the first thing, that team is never going to win a World Series. The 1990s Indians as a decade are never going to win a World Series. No matter what you do, they won't. It's not going to happen. So there's no real reason for us to root for those guys as opposed to rooting for Jason Kipnis, Corey Kluber, and the current crop of wonderful athletes, and I think they're all extremely talented. And then another point is, for some reason, that '90s group has been overrepresented, and that was a large part of what I wrote about was the promotional items they do. They do like 5 promotional items for the '90s teams every year. They've never done a promotional item for any player from 1955 through 1972, except for one thing for Rocky Colavito in the past like 6 years. They don't. It's like they just ignore it.
Right. They feel that's the money spot. They feel like that's like the fans that were, or I guess they're trying to, the demographic they're trying to attract, with the corner bar and having beer. They want 20-something-year-olds who remember that fondly as a child, because you always remember stuff from your childhood as being better than anything else ever, whether it was or not, which probably it was kind of terrible. And so I think it just feeds into the whole marketing money sweet spot that they're trying to aim for.
Yeah, it's a nostalgia thing, and I think it all goes along. And I guess I didn't get to the point yet of where it fits into the current team, but I think part of that with the current team is you get guys that are fan favorites for who knows why. I don't understand. Jason Giambi was one, and I hated him as a player. I understand him as to me, he could have been an extra coach, not even like an official hitting coach or whatever, and not taking up a 25-man roster spot. That's what bugged me, was the roster spot. Scott Atchison is one. Mike Aviles is one. And I want to say something really scary to anyone who's listening to this. People are going to get mad. I don't care that Mike Aviles' daughter has cancer. And I will say that because a lot of children have cancer, and their parents don't have $4 million a year jobs. I don't care particularly because of this. I don't think that is a reason you can't cut him or can't trade him. It's terrible. It's awful. And I love that they're supporting him, but there's kids with cancer all over the place, and they don't get that kind of support. I'd rather they just continue donating that money to other children who aren't as lucky as Mike Aviles' daughter. They should keep continuing to donate that, but it's not a reason why you have to have him on the team. They're playing. I care more about winning than pretty much anything else, obviously. But they're just playing into that for the story, I think, at this point.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that there's no. He does right now fit the mold of the backup third baseman, backup shortstop, which 2 weeks ago they needed. They didn't have Lindor, and Urshela had just started. And if you go even a week before that, they didn't have really a third baseman because they had Lonnie. So at that time, I think he was a necessary evil, so to speak, because he does fit the utility mold of an infielder, not an outfielder. And perhaps if Jose Ramirez continues to improve his play, he's playing well in Columbus right now.
He's got a hit in every single game so far he's played in Columbus. I mean, you just put him back in his comfort zone, and all of a sudden he's killing it.
Yeah, I don't think he's very far away from being back in Cleveland. Now, logistically, with the 25 as it sits, I don't know if there's a room for him, but if Jose Ramirez can go back to playing like he did in the last few months of last season, I'd much rather have him than Mike Aviles, because of his athleticism and his youth, but also because he's a very good base stealer, and that's, I think, something that Indians really need.
I got in a Twitter fight with someone today. I don't know how many people saw this Twitter fight. Hopefully the person I was talking to will watch this at some point, because I got to get my actual point across, which is that I think if you're going to say Mike Aviles is a left fielder, that Jose Ramirez can play left field better. I think Jose Ramirez is a better shortstop than Mike Aviles. He's a better third baseman than Mike Aviles. He's a better second baseman than Mike Aviles. He's a better base runner. I think he can be a better hitter, especially in a limited role. So I don't think there's a single part of Mike Aviles' game that Jose Ramirez is not as good or better at, and Jose Ramirez will be better this September than he is now, and he will be better in 2016 than he is now, whereas Mike Aviles will probably be worse in September than he is now, and he will definitely be worse in 2016 than he is now. So, to me, you put all that together, and that's a move that should be made now, irrelevant of anything else. And so, I'm glad they cut Scott Atchison today. That's a good start. I didn't think they would ever do that. People love him. They call him Grandpa. It's exciting. Did I offend you, Stephanie? I'm sorry.
No, I was just trying to think of how what you were saying earlier about what the popular choice is and what them trying to reach out to fans who aren't necessarily knowledgeable fans. And I was thinking about how much more to them Mike Aviles is a marketable commodity than Jose Ramirez, who kind of always has a cranky look on his face and
he
always
speaks English.
kind of, yeah. And I think that's why he sometimes wins out too, because they're also worried about. I think it's a team that's very concerned about its image a lot.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at the numbers, I would say that it's arguable. Corey Kluber and Trevor Bauer have been the team's top two pitchers this year, and I would say Bauer, throughout his last start, has been the most, regular, every time out, been the best, most predictable. I think you could say Kluber's had a few bad starts, but Kluber's the face of the franchise because he's got all the jokes. You could do the Cy Kluber jokes and all those things. He won the Cy Young, so you're happy about that. You can make he doesn't smile. It's all funny. Trevor Bauer is the guy who got in trouble with the league for making a drone or for flying a drone. He's the guy who gets in Twitter fights with people, which I love. I love his Twitter fights. I've never looked at one and said Trevor Bauer is wrong. I think he's been right every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's not friendly. It's not fun.
Right.
It's fun for me. Fun for me is opening a show by saying Tom fuckery, but that's not. I do that because we're allowed to swear on this because Damien will never put it on the actual podcasting network. He hides us in he hides us in the back doors on the site. You have to know the secret password to watch this.
It's probably for the best. It's probably because rarely is there good conversation other than just raw emotion in a lot of these. Which I'm surprised I'm not more angry. But I think it
I like to laugh when I'm angry because it makes it easier. It makes my life better.
I'm not surprised anymore.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you, Stephanie. I'm not, and I should be, but it's just like eventually enough is enough. Somebody's got to just fucking step up and do something about the fact that you're constantly getting your ass kicked by teams that's not even good right now.
No, not really.
2 games above 500. They're not even a very good team.
No. I watched them against New York last weekend, and it was embarrassing. Like, they looked like the Indians did tonight, and I can't believe it's the same team. Like, when their fans talk about them, they say things like, oh, no one hits, everyone does it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, what team are you talking about if you only watch them play the Indians?
I just followed a couple people from Detroit on Twitter, and it's definitely true. But I think every team is like that. Every team. I saw MLB posted something the other day from Kansas City where they had signs that they needed a bat. They wanted to trade for a bat, and I'm like, you're in first place. You're killing everybody. You have 7 All-Stars. You don't need a bat. What are you gonna do? Move Omar Infante? He's an All-Star.
Well, they got like 3 All-Stars. They've got 7
Omar,
by some random hacking default. I'm almost certain.
You didn't listen to my show on
had
Sunday.
Something to do with the Royals having 8 or 9 guys in the All-Star game.
We had a perfect argument of why Omar Infante deserves to be on the All-Star team. If you would have listened to my show on Sunday, you would have known that.
I must not have had the chance to listen to such an eloquent argument, as I'm certain it was.
It was essentially, I didn't make it. It was all Will Hart. He was saying that because Omar Infante led the Tigers to a World Series. I think that was why, maybe. I don't know. I can't even remember it anymore. It was an odd argument.
Hey.
I have a friend that loved him with the Tigers. I don't understand it, but I mean, she's a Tigers fan, but she just, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it is about him that makes like I don't know. I was baffled. These mediocre ball players that people just hop on board and just obsess over and love, and I never get it.
Well, I think Cleveland does it, but maybe we're being too myopic too, and this is the same everywhere in the whole country. That's a possibility, I think. I went to a game at Kansas City, and it was Omar Infante poster day. So I have a free Omar Infante poster, actually, and everyone was so excited that they got their poster of their favorite player. You realize. You have Alex Gordon, right? It's like, do you know who else is on the team?
when I went to Kauffman Stadium in 2006, they gave me a David DeJesus shirt. That was the giveaway that day. But everybody in the park had on a Jeremy Affeldt shirt because he was sort of their kind of
That's
only
good.
star player at the time. And I'll never forget this. It was when they were really, really bad, really bad. And if they even got like 10 hits, not even 10 runs, 10 hits, everybody there got a dozen Krispy Kremes. So I had this coupon to get Krispy Kreme. And then the fireworks, there were supposed to be fireworks after the game, they didn't go off. And so they gave us all a free ticket to another game. Like a whole free ticket to another game just because the fireworks didn't work.
That's great.
I'd like to discuss this. How does an entire fireworks show fail to occur?
It was the craziest thing. Like they lowered. It was before all the remodeling, so out in the outfield was just the fountains, and so I guess they'd go off in the fountains. This is the only time I've been there, and it didn't work. And then they kept putting up the lights and putting down the lights, and you'd see people go out and mess around. And then finally, they just put on the lights after about 20 minutes and said, "All right, these aren't working, so you can have a free voucher. Turn in your ticket at the box office, and you can get a free ticket to any Royals game in the future."
That's some minor league shit right there.
I know, and we had the Jesus shirt. I think we went back the next night and had like a cooler, I still have it, like a Royals like lunch cooler. It's really nice. You can fit a whole 6-pack of beer in it.
It was. I went to Houston last week, and the game I went to, we got a free duffel bag from the Astros. So I'm really thinking about becoming an Astros fan, actually. I mean, they scored 8 runs off of Felix Hernandez, which is something the Indians generally don't do. They kicked it. They hit like 4 home runs. That's something the Indians don't do in 2 weeks. You know, it was really it's tempting. I got family there now.
My fandom is up for grabs right now. So if anybody wants to, bribe me, I might watch a game or 2 of yours.
Well, if you see my living room, you know I can't change. I mean, like in reaching distance, I got Mini Carlos. If you're watching live, Mini Carlos. I've got this little notepad thing that's all got Indian stuff on it. I can't like.
Was that Lego Carlos?
Yeah, Lego Carlos. He's from Ryan Thompson's Tribe Time Now podcast. He's actually the mascot of that show, but he lives at my house, so I get to put him on whenever I want to. Really, I even have this flop. I meant to put this on my floppy hat. That's my weekend update hat. So like I've got all this stuff here. Can we talk shit about Michael Bourne?
Why not?
This is Stephanie's thing, and actually, and Damien, who's I'm going to call our director, producer. He sent me a message and said, "Why didn't you tell me you wanted to do a show with Stephanie before yesterday?" And I go, I was just kind of talking on Twitter. I don't know. It wasn't a thing, but. The reason I wanted to do it is because we have very similar opinions on Mike Aviles and Michael Bourne.
Yes. And I honestly, and some of these guys, like I honestly want to like them. I feel bad getting so mad at them because I really just want to like him. I like the old Michael Bourne of years ago, but I just can't watch anymore. Brandon Moss did look better in his subsequent at bats, but the one where he struck out on 3 pitches and swung at something that practically rolled across the plate. I mean, that kind of stuff. I just can't.
I do want to say I want to go back to my offensive comments earlier for all the people who are mad at me because I said I don't care. Aviles' daughter has cancer. I don't mean that as a person. I don't like the ball players as human beings and ball players as ball players are different things. I have them completely separated in my head. And I've talked about this before on the show, I think, because I called Ryan Rayburn a piece of trash once, and somebody said, well, I don't think he's a piece of trash. And this obviously was before he was hitting well. Now he's okay. Because he's hitting okay. I still don't want him in the field ever, but at the play he's fine. So I said that, but what I meant was as a baseball player, he's a piece of trash. Not as a human being. I respect him as a human being. I respect Mike Aviles, and I wish him and his family all the best in some other city. Because to me, it has to be run as a business. You have to work as hard as you can to put the best product on the field. Just like we said at the beginning of the year. What was the best product from the beginning of the season? It was Francisco Lindor at shortstop, Jose Ramirez as utility man, and maybe Mike Aviles is a second utility man with, like, say, Rayburn or Murphy not on the team. Like, just predicting going into the season. They didn't do that because they were trying to fuck around with a bunch of other stuff. They didn't. The primary goal was not winning today. It was keeping Lindor around in 2022, and it was making sure they didn't have to pay him an extra $5 million, and and it was not wasting money, not looking stupid by wasting $15 million on Swisher this year and $15 million on him next year if you cut him before the year even started. I mean, it's so great he's not on the team right now. I don't hate Nick Swisher as a person. I hate him as a baseball player.
Well, I have a good Michael Bourne story because my dad and I went to the game on Saturday, was it? I can't remember if I was talking to him the night before and we saw this on TV as we were prepping our plans for going to Saturday's game or if it was Saturday's game. But Michael Bourne made what was a pretty routine throw, either threw into third base or threw to home.
Second, I think.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. And, I mean, it was like an average throw that you would expect your center fielder to do in his sleep. And my dad was like so impressed, like, I didn't know Michael Bourne could throw that far.
No, it was to third base because I remember making a joke about the reason why he tried to tag up on that play was because he thought Michael Bourne was the worst center fielder in the league, and it turns out he's only the second worst or something like that. I think it was the third base or whatever.
Yeah. Right,
yeah,
but that's
is
how
this when he
bad
got...
it was. We thought this was like, wow, because he did what he was supposed to do, like the bare minimum. We're like...
Well, yeah, even going back to tonight, that Mike Aviles, the inning that ruined it all. They were tied 1-1, and things just blew up. Salazar got frustrated, obviously, by the strike zone. But the thing that started that whole thing off was what should have been either a single or an out to left field. I think if Brantley was there, he may have made a sliding catch and gotten an out. Even if he didn't, he would have had a single. You had a guy on first. Salazar can attack the batters, instead of working defensively and walking them, he could go right at him and try to get a double play, that type of thing. Instead, he had a guy on second, so he walks two guys and then has the error. So I think all those runs could have been avoided. But Mike Aviles is playing left field, and he takes an awful route to the ball and let it get by him. Like, if he had taken a good route, it still would have been a single. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But he takes this awful path and lets it get by him and gives the guy a double. Should have been a triple. I mean, he should have just kept going because what's Mike Aviles going to throw you out? No. So that's why it's a joke.
I just don't understand. Sorry, go ahead, Steph.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I just don't understand the obsession with putting him in the outfield, and it's not. I'm not even sure this is worth talking about any longer because
it is worth talking about because he keeps doing it.
It's so beyond making sense that they continue to do this, and it's just utter bullshit. I can barely walk right now because I tried to jog for the first time in like a month, and I hurt something in my foot. I would be a better left fielder than Mike Aviles, regardless of throwing out possibilities. Mike Aviles is a terrible outfielder.
When I played ball,
the rest of us would not be as good as Mike Aviles. I'm sorry.
I could do it. I could give him a run.
Okay, go. You're younger than me.
When I played ball, whenever they put me in the outfield, I mostly pitched. I was very bad. I took bad tracks to balls. I would run in, and the ball would always go over my head. I had the worst depth perception of anybody ever. And for years now, I've watched the people the Indians put in the outfield, and I feel like I can relate to him because this is how I would play the outfield. Like, I remember David DeLucci. Like, he would just
talk about him.
Run around like a chicken with his head cut off. And, like, that's how they all do. They just run in, like, the wrong direction and then try and run back in the right direction. And I feel my dad even said he went to watch my cousin who has, like, a 7 or 8-year-old son. He's like, I went to watch his son's t-ball or baseball team. And he said, I feel like they play fundamentals better than these guys. And that's kind of how I feel. Like, and he was serious. Like, it wasn't like the old joke, like, little leaguers could be better. Like, he's, like, pointing out ways they fundamentally were more sound than some of the things the Indians did.
I'm not going to insult the whole team that way, though. I'll give you one or two guys.
Mike Aviles reminds me of that little leaguer who, when he looks up and tries to move backwards, loses his balance. And he can't do the two at the same time. And therefore, when he's trying to track down fly balls, he's not really sure if he's going to fall or hit something at the same time. It looks like he's so uncomfortable out there that it's it's a joke. Why is he still out there? Like every other week, it seems.
Yeah. That's the key too, that he looks uncomfortable out there, because I've noticed that over time with some of the people where I'm like, why are they in that position? I'm thinking to myself, they don't even look like they want to be in that position. Like I mentioned on Twitter the other night, the old Ryan Garco in the outfield experiment, where I actually felt bad for him. Like he looks like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth, and this is not going well. And you have Mark DeRosa, who can play all 9 positions practically, so why are you doing this to this guy? And I feel like that's kind of, I don't know.
No,
like
no,
the trend. Like they don't even look comfortable there.
You're killing me.
Moral
I love this. Oh man, yeah. I
of
mean,
the story is the Indians' outfield over the years has just been the most pathetic thing in baseball, apparently.
but can we go back to like the whole thing before of how the Indians don't want to make any massive changes, about how the fact that the Royals won the American League last year because of their defense, like more than anything else, they couldn't hit worth shit. They were one of the worst hitting teams in the league, and they went to the World Series because they saved 80 runs on the season with their defense. And the Indians have a guy in Tyler Holt, and they've got a guy in James Ramsey, and they got a guy in Clint Frazier that if they came up this minute, they would probably be worth a higher WAR than even Rayburn or Murphy or Aviles or Bourne, all those guys, because they would save so many runs defensively, it's irrelevant if they batted 0 when they were hitting. You know, I mean, you just assume it's another pitcher. So that's what bugged me about Lindor not coming up. It's what bugged me about Ursula not coming up until now. And it's going to bug me about those other guys not coming up, because a positive defensive run saved is worth exactly the same amount as a positive offensive run scored. You know, they're not scoring runs anyway. What's it going to hurt if you remove Bourne and replace him with someone who maybe doesn't hit as well?
And I'm not so certain that's not a thought that hasn't gone through their mind. I think a lot of it is just, how do we do that? Because you've got Bourne
I
and
think
you've got
they're
Swisher.
afraid of change. But they're afraid of change. We've talked on this podcast and others, and on the website and on Twitter, about sunk costs. Those guys are sunk costs. They already paid for them. It is irrelevant of anything else. The only thing they could be afraid of is if they release them, if somebody else were to pick them up and they were to play well. That is the only thing that there is to be afraid of in those situations. Because right now they are negative value players for the team. A negative value player should never be on the 25-man roster.
I mean, right now, Murphy and Rayburn have some value to them.
Yes, they are not. I'm talking about Nick Swisher. I'm talking about Michael Bourne. I'm talking about Michael Aviles. I was talking about them at the beginning of the season. So you can't. I can be wrong. I'm not saying that this is infallible. Obviously, even sabermetric stats obviously are not perfect. I don't think any of them claim to be. You know,
but especially with Swisher, like I was always high on the Swisher bandwagon, thinking that he could have something close to 2013, which wasn't worth the money that he's being paid, but he wasn't bad either, and he contributed, and at times was actually a pretty decent hitter. I was thinking there was a chance with surgery and with some extra time off that he could come close to that. And his first few games in Texas, when he went like 3 for something, looked like maybe he could be a serviceable DH.
Yeah, that didn't excite me.
No, it didn't happen ever again. So at this point, getting rid of him, even if it's for like a bulk amount of just laundry detergent.
Well, but I mean, to me, like, and you said something about, you were joking about making other players take HGH, sneaking it into them so they fail drug tests. And I had said I'd rather they take 2 buses, have one go to Cleveland, pick up Ruggles, Odor, and a couple other guys, bring them up north, and then take Ty Van Berkeley, Michael Bourne, and Nick Swisher and bring them to some farm someplace, leave them off in Amish country. I don't think they need to trade them. I don't think they need to get anything back for them. I think they just need to be gone. I think that would improve the team.
Right.
And I do like Ruggles. I like his name. Ruggles.
It's quite solid. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
No, I always talk about putting people on an island and like leaving them some food, because I'm not a monster, but then they can just stay on the island, and then we'll come for them in a couple years when their contract's up.
Well, I think the farm, I mean, there's food on a farm. They can work there. They can play with the animals. And Nick Swisher would love it. He loves everything. He's never had nothing bad has ever happened in Nick Swisher's life, which I think is great for him. It's totally great, bro. It's awesome.
I think what's kind of sad is how they have these players that they make like I don't want to say franchise player in way of talent, but franchise player in way of like how we're going to market them. Like they have Travis Hafner and they have Pronkville, and then he gets hurt, and then the joke, like our joke, my husband and I's joke became, well, Pronkville's the lip of the outfield grass because that's where he hit it to every time. And then you still have these like sad little Pronkville signs that are up for like years after they're even calling it Pronkville anymore.
I have one in my living room.
Yeah, and then they have Brohio, and then Brohio kind of sadly fizzles, you know.
But Pronk had to earn his. He was the greatest Indians DH of all time before they gave him any credit for anything. And when he got that contract that everybody hated, I believe that he deserved it because he didn't get paid anything when he was hitting home runs. So the same thing with Grady Sizemore. I've always said that those guys deserve those contracts because, you know, they got it. You know, they were getting back pay from what they already did, essentially. Whereas Nick Swisher did for the Yankees, and he did for Chicago, and he did for Oakland, and then he gets paid by the Indians. That's whatever. It's done. I'm done with him. I'm glad he's on the DL, not because I want him to be in pain, but because I don't want him to be on the 25-man roster. Again, I feel like I have to keep separating these things because people will think I'm a horrible human being, which I am.
Yeah, I thought that a long time ago, so it didn't matter what you said.
Entirely beside the point that I believe in a strong baseball team with a good defense. And bunting when you can't score runs 3 days in a row. I get in lots of Twitter fights, I think.
But one run every game this weekend. I can't even. And I'm
they
going
scored more yesterday because it seemed like against the Tigers maybe they like give in a little late innings. They have a bad bullpen, so they probably aren't intentionally doing it, but they've given up runs each of the last 2 days.
Right. I'm going to Pittsburgh for the whole series this weekend, next weekend.
Good luck.
And it never goes good when I travel, especially when I'm traveling to do a whole series. Like, I'll never forget, I went to San Francisco in 2011, and that ended badly when they played the Giants. And then one of the guys that writes for our blog, he's like, oh, I'm going to go see the Indians play the Giants last year. And I was, good luck. Hope it ends better than it did for me. No, it ended terribly for him, too. Seems like anytime you take this big, like, trip, like road trip, wow, we're doing this, and it just... you're like embarrassed to be there in an Indian shirt.
I saw Ben Broussard hit a home run in the Metrodome once. The Indians lost, but Ben Broussard hit a home run in the Metrodome. So that upper deck, like way up, left field.
Wow.
Great. I'm so glad that building doesn't exist anymore. At least not as a sporting venue. It's the worst place I've ever been.
Well, hopefully the road trip karma doesn't follow me because I might be in PNC Park as well for the 4th. So maybe get one win if I'm at one of those games.
I remember some awful series from the Indians playing in Pittsburgh. Like when the team I thought was good and they went in there and just got killed. Or there was one series where there were like 3 extra inning games and it was all raining and it went to like 3 in the morning. Just awful. Those are my memories. I've never been there, but those are my TV memories of PNC.
And it looks like they're going to be facing Jeff Locke, who's sort of the left-handed junk baller kind of pitcher who
That's good.
Is struggling for the Pirates, and now they're going to be. I can see now the people I know in Pittsburgh are going to be like, Locke's turned it around. Look at him shut down the Indians.
Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah. Everybody does it now. I mean,
it's not like they killed Ryan pitched yesterday at Colomé. That's awful. I almost pitched a perfect game. It's like it really doesn't matter at this point.
I will say. With this one-run business that's been going on, and this just general stagnation of the offense, this might be a lot of emotion from me, but I think a shakeup might have to happen with this roster. I don't know if this core of players is, as it sits, going to do anything beyond what they've already accomplished in the last 3 years, unless it's added to substantially.
Well, I did the numbers today. I took 3 hours looking into runners and scoring position numbers, scatter charts and stuff like that for a few different players. And one thing that's interesting is they have a 242 batting average on balls in play, I think, with runners in scoring position is second worst in baseball.
Hmm.
So they've had some bad luck, although some of that I think is their own doing. Because I swear Carlos Santana has a completely different approach, and I think he did it today. Twice today, he came up with runners on scoring position. Awful approach. The last time he comes up, no one on, he gets a single up the middle, and it was just a nice line drive single. I think if he goes for a line drive single when he has runners on, he would be able to do it. It's trying to hit a home run, and he does it, and Brandon Moss does it, and Michael Bourne does it. And Michael Bourne trying to hit a home run is a very big problem. I think if he went for singles, he would be fine. But he has to try to hit a home run.
The one thing that's really bothered me about Santana lately is everybody knows now that if you throw it low and away, he's just going to reach across the plate and he's going to pull a soft dribbler to second base.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you're a professional athlete. You have got to try and put the ball down the third baseline. Look at Mike Moustakas right now. Was a sub 200 hitter for 3 years, and the first few
All-star.
weeks we've been, and he's a legitimate all-star, one of the only ones on that.
Yeah.
One of the very legitimate all-star. The first few weeks of the season, all he's doing is just shooting the ball in the left field. All outside.
Yeah, and the Indians kept playing him with a shift, and it didn't he wasn't bunting; he was hitting it over to left.
Why is it that? And Brandon Moss does it too. He did. Why do they refuse to just go with the pitch? There's certain pitches you can't hit out no matter what. Just go with it and put the ball in the left field.
It's not the whole lineup. Kipnis will go with the pitch. Brayburn's been doing it. Murphy is always, but that's how he kind of has to hit. I think if Murphy, but I guess they all do. Like Murphy's hitting over 300 because he's going with the pitches. If Santana did that, he could probably hit over 300 too.
Yeah, there's no way he's incapable of doing it.
Gave up a little bit. Yeah. No, and that's why I've started quietly calling for Berkeley's head. And I mean, the rugless thing may be a joke. I don't know that that's necessarily the answer, although it's interesting that Chisenhall and Ramirez immediately both started catching on fire the second they got there. And there was no drawback. There was no, oh, poor me, I'm back in AAA. They just lit it up immediately, and they still are. So maybe that's him. There's obviously something going on there to me. It can't just be luck. It can't just be the difference between AAA and Major League talent, because we've seen other guys, come up from AAA and hit similar numbers that they hit in the majors that they did in AAA. We've seen other guys go down to AAA and be terrible. Like, Kyle Crockett went down and was awful.
Yeah.
So it's not a complete disparity in talent.
I do tend to think that, at least for Chisenhall, that he is a 4A player.
That's probably true, but that's there's got to be something else to it.
Perhaps you very well could be right, but at least with Chisenhall, I think the majority of the reason is the fact that he's just not a major league hitter.
Yeah. Well, is there any point to this? To me, like a lot of Chisenhall's problems were similar to what Santana's doing now, although he was wilder. He swung at more pitches out of the zone. But it's still similar problems of trying to pull too much and that type of thing. Why was the answer to fixing his problem sending him to AAA instead of having the hitting coach work with him here? Now, obviously, the hitting coach wasn't able to fix him here. He should have been working with him from day one, right? So he wasn't able to fix the problem. And the answer to same thing for Jose Ramirez. The answer was to send him down. Instead of having the major league hitting coach work with this guy, they wanted the minor league hitting coach to work with this guy. So why is that seems to me that they actually consider him better at fixing players.
I don't know if it was that so much as they also had Urshela and Lindor behind him. The two positions where the AAA players at those positions were the best, most MLB ready. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Urshela has made great improvements in the last year and a half, and Lindor is who he is. And it just so happens that the third baseman and shortstop in the big league team were struggling the most. So I think that had a lot more to do with it.
But normally, on a normal team with guys that don't have options even, wouldn't you just put those guys on the bench? Wouldn't you put them on the bench and let them work it out? Roberto Perez got to go to the bench. And after he went to the bench, he became a much better hitter. That last week, he played with, as soon as he knew Gomes was coming back, he started hitting better. And I think that was partly a mental thing of him saying, "Oh, good, I don't have to do this anymore." He definitely looked out of his depth for 2-3 weeks, however, maybe 4 weeks, however long Gomes was out. And then as soon as Gomes was announced that he was going to come back in 2 or 3 days, all of a sudden he started hitting better. And now since then he's had a much better approach at the plate when he's been used as a backup. And
Well,
I think the same would be true of of Chisenhall and Ramirez had they been benched instead of dumped in AAA.
they could have been benched, but it goes back to what we've just been talking about. I mean, you have Mike Aviles on this team.
Yeah.
There's one more spot on the bench taken up by somebody who, I mean, I'd much rather see Lonnie Chisenhall try and work things out in Cleveland because clearly he's too good for AAA.
Yeah,
I'd rather see him get his
and I know
back here.
I know you're big on Ursula, and I'm kind of big on Ursula. I'm not as big as many people are. Last year, when people were calling for him to be called up in September, I was not one of those people. I was calling for Lindor then, but I was not calling for Ursula, and I wasn't even calling for him necessarily when they did call him. I was not against it, but I wasn't huge on they have to bring him up right now when they did. I'm not sold that Chisenhall isn't still the guy in 2016 and 2017. Maybe he isn't, but I'm not 100% sure that he isn't. So I would like to see him up as at least a bench player, or a DH or something. I said before the season I think he should DH because of the defensive issues.
Yeah,
I feel like they've just given up on him though, like that he's.
I think they gave up on him.
Whether he can or not, but yeah.
I think him and Kipnis came up at a very similar time. They had very similar numbers early on, and they both struggled at times. And when Kipnis struggled, they stuck with him. They kept him where he was in the lineup. They played him every single day. When Chisenhall struggled, they replaced him with Jack Hanahan. Then they sent him to AAA. Then they brought him back up for 3 days, and then they sent him back down. And Kipnis had an entire year last year where he was awful. And it was because he was hurt. But at no point in time did they put him down in AAA because he had options. He could have went down. But when Chisenhall was having an amazing year, they still messed around with him and benched him half the time. So I mean, they've never given him the kind of respect that they've given to Kipnis, who both were 1 and 2 round picks. Both came up through the system, both came up the same year, and they've never treated them equally. That was it.
You're right. You were very right.
I like Matt Laporta. I'll ruin everything. I like JD Marte.
I was thinking about how the Tigers have taken guys like JD Martinez and Anthony Gose and turned them around, and you hear them talking about how the hitting coach saw this in them, and they worked with them to fix this in their swing. And I'm wondering, there's got to be people out there who can figure out what's going wrong and get through to these guys, because maybe there's a thing where he's figuring out what's going wrong, but he's not good at working with the players, or I don't know what's going on with Sam Berklio. But, I mean, there's got to be a better solution somehow, some way to, I don't know.
Charlie Manuel's a damn good hitting coach. I mean, he's like 88 something? Maybe dead? I don't know.
No, he's a lot younger than you think. When they heard his age once, I was shocked. He's like in his 60s, maybe?
Yeah, he just has white hair.
Yeah, he's not.
No, I love when Kenny Lofton was on there. Twitter was bugging me too. I feel like if you don't understand sabermetrics, you probably shouldn't understand how to use Twitter. But that's beside the point. But
if only the world were that simple.
But immediately everybody on there is going, "Oh, Kenny Lofton should come back and be hitting coach, and Mike Hargrove should go back." It's like all these. They want all the guys from the '90s to come back just because they were good in the '90s. It's like they don't remember that Eddie Murray already was the Indians hitting coach, and he was awful at it. He was really bad, like as bad as a hitting coach.
Another guy who was fired midway through the season.
Yeah. Although that was probably because of Eric Witch. They didn't get along very well.
Still, they weren't very good under him either, though.
No, they weren't. No, they struggled with hitting too. I mean, really, the only teams that didn't struggle with the bat since the '90s were the Travis Hafner, Grady Sizemore years from, let's say, 2006 through 7.
But a team that was stacked in its own
2005 through 7, something like that.
Yeah, that was a team that was stacked offensively in its own right with five,
with
six
Casey
players
Blake. Yeah,
who had
had
some
100 home
very good
runs.
seasons.
I mean, the shitty infielder who got moved around because he didn't have a real position ended up with like 100 career home runs with the team. I mean, that's that type of team that was. That type of team doesn't exist in baseball anymore. I still don't think. I think if you take the Tigers as good as they are, they do not stack up against teams from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Miguel Cabrera does, but no one else does on that team. And there's no other teams in the league. You got guys, Bryce Harper, you got Trout and Cabrera, and there are players who are as good as any players who have ever played the game. But in general, offense is so far down that you're not going to make an entire roster out of them.
Yep.
So that's why Kipnis should bat cleanup.
And third and second, and
Yeah.
5 through 9.
Runner.
Yeah, can we use Ghost Run? If we can use Ghost Runners, I want to bring up Gabriel Mejia because he's really good.
Greg Allen in Lake County's got like 20-some steals too.
Gabriel, I think I don't know. I only saw one game so far in the AZL, and he only had one steal in that one game. But he had 72 last year in 70 games. So, and he sprints to center field. I mean, how many guys sprint to center field? He's like Vinny Pistano coming in from right. Except much, much faster. He doesn't look anything like Vinny Pistano.
He probably runs faster than Vinny Pistano was throwing towards the end of his career.
Don't make fun of Vinny. I like Vinny too.
How's he doing in LA? Is he doing okay?
I don't even think he's on the team. I thought the last time I checked,
he's like too bad real estate broker, I think.
I don't know. But I'm joking, but like, if they brought up Gabriel Mejia right now, he would be worth more than Bourne because he can play center field really well and he's really fast and he could be used as a pinch runner. Like, just as a fourth outfielder. I think they could bring up a guy who's 19 years old and he'd be better than Michael Bourne.
Well, I mean, they did that with Jose Ramirez in 2013 just to pinch run.
And it worked incredibly well. He scored from first on a sacrifice bunt, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right.
Drew Stubbs, I remember it because it was the first year I started keeping track of offensive plays and did like a top 10 list at the end of the year. And that was one of my top plays was because he was on first. I think he was stealing second on the play, or it was a hit and run or something. And it's an infield hit. They throw it to first. They overthrew the guy, or maybe even had the out, but he ran to third. Then they overthrew the third baseman, and he scored on it. It's just guys that can run like that are so exciting.
Yeah, it was some kind of sequence like that.
Yeah, and I'm talking about things that happened 5 years ago with Drew Stubbs. How many years ago was Drew Stubbs? 3? 2?
It's only 2 or 3.
I feel like David Murphy's been around forever because we had David DeLucia and Trot Nixon and whoever else before him, Ellis Burks. I guess he did. Burks was okay, but
Alex Burks had some really good years.
Yeah.
Yeah, he even had a few with us.
Yeah, he was sort of at the end of the rainbow with us.
I saw Ellis Burks hit a triple once. if you want to tell stories.
If I'm not mistaken, Ellis Burks has multiple 30 steal seasons. He might even have a 40 in there.
No, I saw him hit a triple in 2004, or 2007.
Look at this.
Was it? When was that? It was in a snow game.
We're talking about Ellis Burks.
Was it 2004, right? I don't remember. There was a snow game, and the outfielder couldn't see the ball, and he lost it, and they let him run to third. I don't even remember what year it was. My head is all completely all over the place now. I get all these right fielders confused.
Ellis Burks hit 2 triples in his Cleveland career. One in 2003, his final season with us, and one in 2001.
It must have been in 2003 then, because I remember him being a really old man. I think it was against the Orioles, so you can look that up if you want to. If it was against the Orioles, I'm right. If
he was 38 in 2003, so, I mean...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure...
Social Security.
I'm pretty sure there was snow on the field, and he couldn't see... the outfielder couldn't see the ball. And then they called a delay right after that. That's why I've never forgiven Mike Hargrove, because in 2007 I was at the home opener that got snowed out, and if it weren't for him being an asshole, Paul Bird would have pitched a 5-inning no-hitter. So that's
true. And then
That
didn't the
really
game get
bugged
moved
me.
to Milwaukee, the entire series?
Well, no, that one moved to Seattle. They actually finished
Oh,
it
okay.
in Seattle, but the Angels series got moved to
Okay.
Milwaukee. And of course, I had tickets to every single game in that Seattle series, so I had to spread them out throughout the rest of the year. But that was like on Easter, I think, and we sat there for like 4 hours in the snow before the game even started, and then we had to sit there again. A guy made a snow angel in the field. That my memory works for that. How's that? I can't remember shit in my whole life, and I can remember shit that happened in 2007 at a baseball game.
Well, I
So
remember with Hargrove too when he was finally fired. I mean, I knew a lot of fans who, the kind of fans that get worked up and don't really think about things intelligently, but that were basically like, "Good riddance, it was time. He couldn't, get us over the hump to win the World Series."
that's crazy.
But then
I,
the
I feel
same
like I
people
was
are
one of
like
those fans
drooling
back
when
then.
he's like back as like a special advisor in spring training. They're like, Mike Hargrove, I love him.
See, back
So
then I was in elementary school or whatever, so I definitely wasn't big into stats, and I was so distraught when they fired him. I was like, "What are you doing? How could you possibly fire this man who has been to 2 World Series and gets us to the playoffs every year?" I was happy with playoffs, really, legitimately happy with playoffs, and I thought that they were going to go back to the World Series in whatever 2000, I think it was. Anyway, so so that was just really bothersome to me. I don't even know how old I am. I think I was in junior high then.
that makes me feel kind of old that you were in junior high then.
Kevin's younger than I am, so
I was 11.
so at least got a couple of years.
I was in college.
See? Well, this is a good point. We can all agree on things, and we're across generations. In fact, I'll get some of my older friends. I got
point of view.
some 72-year-old Indians fans. We'll get them on here, and we'll really get into this.
Yeah.
I got a guy I know who watched Satchel Paige pitch when he used to be in Florida. So
There's a guy that lives in Lorraine. He played in the Negro Leagues with Hank Aaron. The very brief time Hank Aaron was in the Negro Leagues, but he's a really cool guy, and he's around at stuff sometimes. His name's Ernie Nimmons, but
okay. I feel like it's too boring of a podcast topic to talk about now to regular people. But I really, one of the reasons I want to talk to you on the Tribe Time now is because I'm really into the Negro Leagues, and I saw you were doing something with that, and I'd love to learn
I do everything
because
with
the books that I've read, which are Shades of Glory, and I'm currently reading the Negro League Encyclopedia, just from front to back. It doesn't have enough for me, and like the numbers never match up on Baseball Reference, and it's so hard to actually learn anything about it. I'd love to at least find out where you can find that information.
the good books, if you want more cultural aspects of it, but there's a good book called Rise and Ruin of the Negro Leagues. It's by Neil Lanctot. It's spelled Lanctot. That's probably one of my favorite books on the Negro Leagues. It's more modern Negro Leagues, like 1930s, 40s. Not
Okay.
stuff. That's a good one. Only the Ball Was White was.
I've heard of that one. I haven't read that one yet.
Basic one. Those are two good ones. It's very scattered. People do like team histories, and it's kind of all over the place sometimes.
I guess I have to find one of those for Cleveland because in the Shades of Glory one there was a large focus on the origins of it, which I found very interesting. The black players playing in Major League Baseball essentially before they were banned, and then they pretty much stuck on that New York, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia thing the whole time. A little bit of Chicago, but it was pretty much those things, and they only mentioned Cleveland and like Atlanta. I know had a lot of teams, which is awful. The name was the Atlanta Black Crackers.
Yep.
It's just I guess at the time that was good, but it's good they changed it to the ABCs eventually. They changed it to the Indianapolis ABCs.
Right.
But, so
my book covers Cleveland. It's about integration, but I do a lot about the Negro Leagues in Cleveland too, but mostly 1920 to the present.
Yeah, I'll have to see that. Well, weren't you given a talk or something on?
Yeah, I gave it.
I don't. Okay, Ryan was plugging that for a while. I'm obviously 2,000 miles away from there, so it's not.
Right.
Help
No,
me,
and
Eddie.
there's a big conference. If that's something you're interested in, it rotates cities every year. Last year it was in Cleveland in 2012. It was in Detroit in last year, and then this year it's in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, Pittsburgh's got all the great histories, and that's what everyone always wants to talk about. Are those,
right,
two or
so we're
three teams in
bringing
Pittsburgh.
right. I'm on their planning committee, so we're bringing in players, and there's a lot of research presentations and all kinds of stuff. Depends on the city and who's working on it, who you get and who you're able to bring in. I remember when it was in Kansas City, geez, that was like 9 years ago. They had Satchel Paige's all of his children, like all 7 or 8 children came and talked
Oh, that's
about
cool.
what they
I will
remember
say,
from him.
you probably didn't see this because it's in. I think it was part of the renovations in Kansas City. They have Monarch stuff in the Hall of Fame, and it's pretty cool. I like that they actually respect the team. The Indians have one placard in their,
I wrote
at the
that.
center field there. Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
But
that was me.
but that's all they have,
Yes.
And I mean, and Larry Doby didn't play in Cleveland, so it's not like they don't really. I guess he played for the Indians, I mean, but he didn't play for the Cleveland Buckeyes or any of the
Right.
teams that preceded them. So I mean, I feel like they should honor those players like Al Smith, if nothing else. Those
Right.
type of guys beforehand. And really, like I said, I want to know more about them. I don't. I know some. I know more than the average fan does probably, but I don't know
They have
enough.
been receptive because the plaque came about because they used to wear well, I don't even know if they do that too often anymore, but they would wear the Buckeyes uniforms. But then there would be nothing on the scoreboard or nothing around the park.
Mhm.
So I wrote them and I said, I don't want anything for this. I feel like people need to know what's going on and kind of know what's behind this. So here, if I write you stuff, will you use it? And I'm president of our local Sabre chapter, so we have a decent relationship with the Indians through that. So they were very receptive. They're very nice about it. And then they said, oh, we've also got approval for this plaque. How about you help us work on that too? So, I mean,
Oh, okay.
they're receptive, but I think you kind of have to poke at them some to get
Well,
some of the
that's really cool. That's better. All I have is a brick out there, so that's awesome that you have the.
Yeah, no one
you have
knows it's me, though. So it's funny because
Well,
one time someone's like, well, I know you're into all those Negro Leagues. Have you seen the plaque at the park? The plaque at the park.
well, I think I just did that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
We were more criticizing that they only have one plaque. Some people are like, well, did you learn what's on that plaque? Like some people like try and teach the information back to me. Like there were 11 teams in Cleveland. I learned that on the
Oh, I
plaque.
was gonna do that to you. No. I like it. You didn't write the Louise Locke Alexis one, did you?
No. That's the only one I had. And they edited some of it too, but it's the only one I've had a hand in, I guess you could say. And they
Okay,
gave
yeah,
me some nice free tickets. I got to see Steven Strasburg's Major League debut, courtesy of them for writing the plaque.
oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, money's better, but
Yeah.
no, that's awesome. Like I said, that's just really, and I'll bring it back around. I think we did about enough tonight for this.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But
Yeah.
I will bring it back around to the beginning and say, why don't they honor these people? I guess I do have a little figurine thing of Larry Doby and Satchel Paige from a game once, but again, those weren't their Negro Leaguers. Those were Negro Leaguers who came to the Indians afterwards, and the Indians were great in signing Negro Leaguers. So how about you brag about it and talk about like Luke Easter and some other guy, Al Smith, guys who came up in that era. Talk about those guys more instead of pushing the 90s constantly.
Yeah.
How about you inform your fan base of the greatness that happened in the 10s, the 20s, the 30s? Nobody knows who Earl Averill is.
I know.
It's a shame. Nobody knows who Hal Trotsky is. You got to talk about these people. They've been talking about Louis Tiant and Sonny Siebert and Sam McDowell since Corey Kluber's been setting strikeout records. And most of the people my age have never heard of those people, and they throw their name on a record list, and that's it. You got to do more with those guys, and those guys are still alive. A lot of them are, at least. So
Sam
there's
McDowell's
so
fun.
much.
If you've never seen Sam McDowell in person, he's
I haven't.
A fun guy.
I've seen Mudcat Grant in person, but not Sam McDowell.
Sam McDowell is fun. He's someone you'd like to go hang out with when the event is over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just think you do that instead of focusing on nostalgia, things that we remember. I'll remember how great that was when Ryan Rayburn threw the ball straight into the ground. Instead of focusing on stuff like that, how about we, focus on the present team and have a mind for history? That's what I like. An equal mind for all of history, nothing to do with what you've seen, what you haven't seen. That's
Well,
going
and
to
the
be it for now.
The Indians were one of the first teams to integrate their press box. They were one of the first early, at least in the American League, early teams to hire African American concession workers. In 1949, they hired Olympic gold medalist Harrison Dillard to handle public relations to do outreach to
BW
the
grad.
African American community.
Okay.
Also a BW grad. Continue, Stephanie.
Yeah.
That's my goal. I have to make
Well, I got to talk about Jason Taylor now. I mean, that's all we have. That's literally all we have. And LeBron, and he didn't even go there. Never.
But yeah, Harrison Dillard, BW grad, he was hired for public relations. It was fun too because they were like, well, they'll still let him leave to go do his track meets. He can have off to go compete. But he was, that was kind of a big deal to hire, a kind of a star athlete to sort of man your public relations department. And they were sort of pioneers in all of that, in part thanks to Bill Beck, who was a pioneer in many things when it came to promotion and stadium work. But, that doesn't get talked about a lot, that they sort of had this other angle as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. What does get talked about is Chief Wahoo and the other side.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's plenty for tonight. I hope people listen to our 3-hour-long Drive Time Now After Dark, and I hope they will listen to it in the future forever and ever as we record it in the back recesses of TribeTimeNow.com. You'll never be able to find this. It's going to be hidden.
That's a damn shame, because this was quality.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep tweeting it forever and annoy people on that. All right, well, have a nice night, and we are going to win tomorrow because Justin Verlander's not pitching. So.
And it doesn't matter because we already lost the series. So.
Well, they're going to win tomorrow, and no matter when you're listening to this, the Indians are going to win tomorrow. So just keep that on forever. The Indians are always going to win tomorrow, and until they don't.
Yes.
All right. Fingers crossed.
Have a nice night, everyone.
You too.